Once, while traveling alone, I booked an Airbnb in Arizona. I had a job interview there, and since it was far from home, I figured, why not turn it into a short trip? I specifically chose the Airbnb because it was far cheaper than any hotel nearby. It was located in a remote area, at the end of a dead-end road with a beautiful desert view in the backyard. I brought my laptop to continue some work for my current job during the day. It was supposed to be a peaceful 3-day break. But what I didn't know was that someone was watching me, and whoever they weren't alone. The road to the house felt strange, like I was driving into another world. The streets grew quieter, houses farther apart, and after the last turn, the paved road simply ended. All that remained was a dusty trail that led straight to the house gate. No signs of life, no cars, no sounds. A small wooden board outside the house read, "Welcome guest." I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The interior was simple, clean, and cozy. The living room had an old couch, a table, and an antique clock ticking quietly on the wall. I placed my bag down, took a deep breath, and told myself, this was a smart, cheap, and perfect decision. I worked all afternoon, then sat in the backyard as the sun dipped below the horizon. The desert glowed in gold, and for the first time, I truly felt alone. Around 9 p.m., I was preparing for my interview, sitting with my laptop. That's when I heard it. Tap. Soft. Subtle. Like a single finger tapping on glass. I turned toward the window. Darkness. Nothing visible. Maybe a bug, I told myself. After all, this was Arizona. Bugs here were monstrous. But somewhere inside, a seed of fear was quietly planted. The next morning, I suited up and went for my interview. It went great. I was optimistic, maybe this was the start of a new life. That evening, I explored the town, grabbed food, and returned to relax in the backyard. The desert wind was gentle, the silence overwhelming. Too silent. I felt it again. That someone watching me feeling. I turned and looked at the bushes. Nothing, just a nameless feeling. Like someone was holding their breath, staring right at me. I was watching Breaking Bad that night when it happened again, that same tap. I got up instantly and looked through the window. No one. Then I stepped out into the backyard. For a few moments, only silence. And then from the darkness, click. Like someone clicking their tongue against the roof of their mouth. I froze. The sound came again. Click. And then I saw it. A figure, dressed in dark clothing, still, just standing. I shouted, "You're on private property. Leave or I'm calling the cops." The figure turned abruptly and walked away into the desert. I ran inside, slammed the door, drew all the curtains. My heart thumped like a war drum. By the third night, I was on edge. I tried watching Breaking Bad again, pretending everything was fine. But in my mind, that figure still stood silently in the desert. At around midnight, I turned off the lights and lay in bed, and then I heard it, click. But this time, it wasn't outside. It came from inside the house, from the closet. I stared at the slightly open closet door. Without thinking, I jumped up, ran out the room, out the house, straight to my car. Still in my pajamas, I called 911. The police arrived in about 12 minutes. I explained everything. They walked inside. I followed. It was a small house, nowhere really to hide. They checked the closet, kitchen cabinets, bathroom. No one was inside, but under the pillow, they found something. A note, yellowed, old. It read, "To watch you, to feel you, to touch you. It is my right. You called me. You chose me." Even the officers looked disturbed. There was no forced entry. All doors and windows had been locked. So how? Did someone leave that note? I left the Airbnb that same night and booked a room at a nearby hotel. I reported the incident to Airbnb, messaged the host. He seemed just as confused. He claimed he had never given the extra key to anyone, said no one else had stayed in the house for months. So, who was it? And how did they get inside? I left that Airbnb, but what happened didn't leave me. I spent nights in the hotel, wide awake. Each time I closed my eyes, I felt like someone was next to my ear, whispering, click. One night, a paper slid under my hotel room door. 3 words were written, "I'm still inside." I ran to the lobby. CCTV footage for that time? mysteriously missing. This wasn't coincidence. That Airbnb wasn't just a place to stay, it was a door to something hidden, something watching, and whoever or whatever it was, it's still out there, watching others, waiting, and maybe you're next. It was a hot afternoon in the summer of 2016 when my boyfriend Sean and I took a short vacation to a secluded, off-grid cabin hidden deep in the valleys and ancient woods of Vermont. We found it on Airbnb under the listing name Off-Grid Experience. It was one of those rare places without electricity, yet it had hundreds of five-star reviews. That gave me the confidence to book it without a second thought. We were avid campers, always drawn to nature, to places untouched by city life. Usually these trips brought peace, but this time, the peace we sought turned into the worst nightmare of our lives. This is what we arrived around 4 p.m. The roads were dusty, surrounded by tall trees. At one point it even felt like we were lost, but then we spotted a small wooden board at a turn, hand-painted, "Cabin guests, turn right." We turned onto a narrow dirt path. Half a mile in, the cabin emerged, exactly like the pictures. Small, single story with a smoke pipe on the roof, gently puffing out white wisps. The front door was secured with an old padlock. The key, as per the host's instructions, was hidden inside a worn-out shoe behind a bush near the door. Inside, there was just one large room, a vintage bed, a table, 2 chairs, and a potbelly stove. The windows were large with only thin mesh screens, no curtains. We unpacked, chopped some vegetables, lit candles, and made soup for dinner. Everything felt magical, pure silence, candlelight, the cool breeze outside, and the warmth inside. Sean brought out an old board game. We played Scrabble under the flickering candlelight, completely losing track of time. By 10 p.m., we were exhausted. I said, "I'm going to bed." Sean replied, "Go ahead. I'll sit outside for a bit, have a smoke." I climbed up to the loft and lay on the bed. Simply to say off in virtual trees, I was drifting between sleep and wakefulness when a loud bang jolted me upright. It sounded like someone had slammed a hand, hard, on one of the cabin's walls. Startled, I called out, "Was that you?" He replied from below, "No." "Was it you?" "No, I was sleeping." My voice trembled. Sean said, "I was outside. Didn't see anything. Maybe a branch fell?" We'd camped in forest before, so we were used to noises, but this time, it felt different. Simply the target. I tried to sleep again when another bang echoed, this time from the backside of the cabin. I jumped out of bed. Sean came in through the door at the same moment. His face was tight, but voice calm. "Grab some knives, just in case." I opened a kitchen drawer and pulled out 2 steak knives. Sean took a hunting knife from his bag and a thick wooden stick. We locked the door and dimmed the lights. Now, only candlelight flickered inside the cabin, and outside was complete darkness. We sat quietly, close to each other. Then came a sound, like something being dragged slowly against the wall. Shh. It sounded like someone was dragging an old metal rake along the outside of the cabin. Then, footsteps. Slow. Thump, thump. Sean whispered, "That's not an animal." We checked the door. It was locked. The windows had only mesh screens. Anyone determined enough could easily break in. Sean said, "Go upstairs. I'll check down here. If anything happens, I'll need to move freely." I protested, but he insisted. 12 o'clock a.m. Sean went, trapped in the loft. I climbed back up, crouching in a corner, clutching the knife. Sean blew out the candle below. Only the faint moonlight now filtered in. Then suddenly, that scraping sound again, louder this time, like someone pulling something heavy right across the outer wall. Sean shouted, "Who's there? Show yourself." No response. Moments later, the stovepipe rattled. Someone was tugging it from outside. Sean rushed, pulled the ladder up and joined me in the loft. Now, both of us were upstairs. Down below was pitch black. 12 o'clock a.m. Sean, 1 a.m., the longest night of my life. The next 4 hours were the most terrifying I've ever lived through. The sounds didn't stop. Knocking at the door, scratching at the walls, footsteps circling the cabin, long stretches of silence. Then suddenly, a loud thump. Sean would peek down occasionally, but saw nothing. I could barely breathe. Every minute felt like the door would burst open and someone or something would walk in. Sometimes we even heard strange murmurs, a faint laugh, a soft groan, but never a face, never a shadow, never a figure. 12 o'clock a.m., Sean. 5:15 a.m. Light and escape. Then, the first rays of dawn lit up the loft. A distant rooster crowed, and instantly, all the noises vanished, as if something existed only in the dark, and daylight drove it away. We climbed down, packed up fast, and loaded the car. Sean checked the ground for footprints or marks. Nothing. No prints. No drag marks. Not a trace. I messaged the Airbnb host. Something or someone kept circling the cabin all night. Is that normal? He replied, "Oh, maybe a porcupine." I didn't argue, but I thought to myself, if a porcupine can walk neatly around walls and rattle stovepipes, I'd like to meet that guy. 2010 epilogue. I still hear the whisper. We never returned to that cabin, but to this day, whenever I step into a quiet forest, whenever I lie down under candlelight, the sounds return. Rrrr, tap, tap, thump, thump. And one question still echoes in my heart. Was it a person or something else? It was a cold November evening in 2023 when I left Philadelphia for Las Vegas. That was a phase in my life when I frequently traveled across states to compete in jiu-jitsu tournaments. Normally, I would share accommodation with a teammate to save money, but this time everyone had booked separate hotels, and I had no choice but to stay alone. Time was short, so without overthinking, I booked an Airbnb, just a short distance from the Vegas Strip. But the moment I arrived, I knew something felt off about the area. Hezbollah, the place was a small studio apartment attached to the host's main house. Just one door, a tiny window, a bed, a mini fridge, and a table. No outside view, no balcony. When I arrived, the host was nowhere to be seen. His profile picture on Airbnb? Just a flower, no real identity. There was a digital lock on the door. The host had sent the code 12345667. I laughed. Seriously? That easy? Then I checked the Wi-Fi password. Password? I thought to myself, either this guy is too innocent or something's not right. I was half asleep, lying in bed, when I suddenly heard a light tapping on the window. Startled, I sat up. The curtains were drawn, so I couldn't see outside. Huh, I said out loud, hoping whoever it was could hear me. Silence. 1 minute, 2 minutes, then again, tap tap. This time louder, I shouted, "Hello?" Again, nothing. My heart started racing. I messaged the host through Airbnb. "Was that you? Why are you tapping on the window?" Almost an hour later, he replied, "I came to drop off water. Thought you were asleep, so I left. I wasn't convinced. Who knocks on a window at 9:30 p.m. without a heads up?" It was midnight. I was sitting on the bed, seriously considering checking into a hotel, when suddenly I heard fingers tapping on the keypad. Beep beep. First attempt failed. Then again, beep beep. Click. The door unlocked. I jumped off the bed, rushed to the door, and slammed it shut with all my strength the moment it opened. From the other side, a deep voice said, "This is my room." I shouted back, "This is my room, get out of here." The voice replied, "It's me, Midal." That was the same name listed as the host on Airbnb. I yelled, "I'm calling the police." I dialed 911 loudly so he could hear. The dispatcher said, "Officers are on the way." About 12 minutes later, the police arrived. I explained everything. They didn't seem surprised. In fact, one officer said, "This isn't the first time this has happened in this area." They stayed outside while I packed and booked an Uber. Meanwhile, the host finally came out and started arguing with the officers. His attitude? Bold and dismissive. He said, "It was my friend. He tried to open the wrong door by mistake." Then he changed the story. "I came myself just to check if everything was okay." The police walked me to the Uber. I got in and left that place behind. But one thing still echoes in my mind. The person trying to enter, I never saw them. Just a voice, not even a shadow. If it really was the host, why lie? And if it wasn't, how did they have the code? Then I realized a chilling possibility. The listing mentioned self-check-in. That means the same code is shared with all guests. So was it a previous guest Or a burglar who knew new guests would arrive and used an old code to get in? Or was it all part of a twisted setup by the host? A few days later, I returned to Philadelphia. I reported everything to Airbnb. Their response? Just a generic message. We'll investigate the matter. But that's where the story got buried. I deleted my Airbnb account. Since then, I only stay in hotels. But that wasn't the end. A month later, I found a small paper slip under my apartment door. Nothing written on it, just a printed picture. That same door, that same keypad, and a shadow standing behind it. I rushed to check my CCTV, but the recording from that night? Gone. Sometimes the cheapest choice turns out to be the most expensive. Solo travel, low-cost lodging, and blind trust. If that combination falls into the wrong hands, the outcome may not be what you expected. I survived, but maybe the next person won't. I've tried to convince myself that it was all a coincidence, but that photo, that slip, and above all, the silence that hides the truth, tells me otherwise. After that night, I moved out. New city, new number, no social media. But some things don't just follow your body, they live inside your mind. Every night, when the lights go out, I hear that keypad sound in my head. Beep, beep, click. Sometimes I wake up with a jolt. It feels like someone gently tapped on the window. I pull back the curtain. Nothing's there. But deep down, I know someone was. I contacted the police multiple times, but there's no evidence. Airbnb blocked me after too many complaints. And the host? His profile vanished. But here's the most terrifying part. Last week, I found another paper slip on my car's windshield. This time, it had just one line written on it. You stole my room. Now I'm taking your city.